Good morning, all. Thank you all for coming. Welcome to the Tyros Control Building, building number 9162. On behalf of the InfoAge Science History Learning Center, the Ocean Monmouth Amateur Radio Club, and our academic partners from Princeton University, welcome. I am Jeff Harshman, N2LXM, president of the Ocean Monmouth Amateur Radio Club. Again, I'd like to welcome you to the InfoAge Science Exploration Center, ISEC. I'd like to thank you all for coming out today on this kind of wet, drizzly morning to help us celebrate this historic event. Now I'd like to introduce Colonel Mike Lorraine, U.S. Army retired, Chairman, InfoAge Board of Directors. Colonel?
Thank you very much, folks. As I said before, this is wonderful. This crowd is unexpected. We really appreciate it. I woke up this morning, I was very concerned. I thought I'd moved out of state. Temperature was 60 degrees. I looked at the calendar again. It's the middle of January. I figured there's something wrong. Last year at this time, I think we had maybe a foot of snow. A few years ago, we had a couple of feet of snow. I'm going to be very brief, which is unusual for those that know me. But all I'm going to do basically is just make introductions. Then I'm going to pass it on to the folks that have really made this thing come about. And that's Fred Carl, Jeff Harshman, and Dan Marlowe. I've been fortunate to be part of InfoAge since 1995, and it's really been an extraordinary experience. And this is an extraordinary experience today to open up the InfoAge Science Exploration Center. It's been coming around for a long time, and finally over the past couple of years, because of support from Camp Evans Base of Terror, believe it or not, put the money into, we're able to do a lot of stuff here. And also for Princeton University, but Dan, you can talk about that a little bit when you get up here. What I'd like to introduce really real quick is some people we have here. I'd like to introduce Mike Smith, representing Chris Smith. He's also his brother, so it's a good representative. We got Sheriff Sean Golden, that you've already seen. Sheriff Golden's been a great supporter for us, and we also have Freeholder John Curley. Freeholder John Curley has been an exceptional supporter of InfoAge over the past many years. We have Ms. Anne-Marie Conti from Wall Township, the mayor, Councilman DeRocco. We have Ms. Cheryl Dwyer, the superintendent of schools from Wall. And now I'm going to introduce some of my board members because these are the folks that make a lot of the stuff, some of the folks that make a lot of the things happen around here, people that have made it happen in the past. We have Pat Decker. Pat, just have to raise your hand, if you could, please. Larry Tormey, Board of Trustee Emeritus. Barbara Ruane, Board of Trustee Emeritus. John Cervini, Dan Marlowe, Fred Carl, and Jules Belicio. One of the other individuals I'd like to recognize is Dr. Victor Lawrence from Stevens Institute of Technology, Dr. Lawrence. We also have Mr. Alan Katz from the College of New Jersey. And the organizations. Now, InfoAge is an umbrella organization, okay? And underneath this organization, a bunch of smaller organizations that support us. And I'd like to introduce to some of the representatives that we have here that are representing them at the present time. From Vintage Computer Festival, we have Evan. Jeff Brace, is Jeff here? Jeff, sorry, Jeff, didn't see you there. For Omark, we have Jeff Harshman and Martin Flynn. Where's Martin? Garden State Central, Steve Lang. New Jersey Antique Radio Club, Ray Chase. And Historic Divers, Neil Worrell. I tell you, I am honored to have these people to work with, these organizations to work with, and this Board of Trustees to work with. But there's one other individual I'd like to put out who is his concept that you'll see. And if you take a look at the concept plan when you get a chance on the computer over here, you'll see where we're trying to go with this and what this is going to look like in a couple of years for students, for people who want to really look into space. Steve Fowler. Where are you, Steve? Steve's the guy. So, with that being said, we have a tight schedule. I think I didn't speak more than 5 minutes. Okay, good. That worked. Jeff, back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colonel. Today we mark the 70th anniversary of Project Diana, but to help you better understand what this celebration is all about, we must travel back in time. A few hundred feet from where we are now, in a small wooden building, on a cold and windy January morning, not much like it is today, preparations were being made. A group of military personnel, scientists, and technicians waited. Weeks of preparation had been completed, and equipment was checked and checked again. Mathematical equations checked and rechecked. After a few failed attempts, would the experiment work this time? As the top of the hour approached, the command was given. A stream of radar pulses was sent out into space. They waited, huddled around their equipment, waiting to see if the experiment would succeed. 2.5 seconds later, they had their answer. The equipment received the echo back. What makes this experiment such a unique event is that their target was 265,000 miles away, the moon. At 11:58 a.m. local time, on January 10, 1946, a hole had been punched in the sky. Project Diana, named after the Roman goddess of the moon, had been a success and proved that space communications were possible. This was widely now considered the first shot fired in what was become known the space race. The antenna and the building and the equipment are all gone now, lost to the annals of time. And so are most of the men who made that experiment possible. But the spirit of their achievement lives on. And we are here today to honor those who led the way of global communications. Since 2002, the Ocean Monmouth Amateur Radio Club has held a special radio event on the weekend nearest to the anniversary date. The event has always been to honor the communications milestone. This year, OMARC and our academic partners from Princeton University are adding a new venue to this event. Using the TLM-18 space telemetry antenna, the big dish outside our door, we will be reproducing the communications experiment, plus communicating with other amateur radio stations by bouncing signals off the moon. I would like to bring to the podium some of those who had the vision, hard work, and dedication to preserving our radio history that has made this day possible. First and foremost, Mr. Fred Carl, InfoAge founder and operations officer. Fred?
It is truly excellent to be here. When Mike and I got access to this building, it was a little different. It was a little different. I think we filled 3 30-yard dumpsters. But that's yesterday, and this is today, and there's been wonderful growth and happiness because we have the chance to use the past to touch the future. And we get to see evidence of that. Students doing better and getting accepted at great colleges, members being able to contribute to this fine adventure. And I would just like to call out one example that is really fun is Martin Flynn, one of our great OMARC members. We've got to watch his son Tim grow and get more competent and more great abilities, and we hope to be able to do that with busloads of students from Wall Township, because this is a unique situation enabled by the Township of Wall, where a town got behind a preservation effort and has supported all these years and protected it. And as we see more historic efforts, that is truly unique and wonderful, and the township should be commended for that. Okay? So this is our chance to make the future better, because kids don't understand that the future needs them, and there is a place for them if they reach for it. And we want to be the inspiration for those kids to say, there's a place for me, and I can make my world better. Thank you very much. Enjoy the day.
Thank you, Fred. I'd like to bring to the podium now Dan Marlowe, K2QW of Princeton University, leader of the academic team that really spearheaded the resurrection of the TLM-18 antenna. Dr. Marlowe.
Thanks, Jeff. Let me just talk a little bit about the history of the rehabilitation effort, and in doing so, I hope I can acknowledge, I'll probably leave some people out because so many people worked hard on it, but acknowledge the people. So this started, I believe, or our involvement, Princeton's involvement started, I think, 4 years ago. And it started, I remember it clearly, I was talking to Norm Jurasic, and Norm is the person who really made, he's the brains of the operation. He did a lot of the design, worked with our engineer, Jeff Gettelfinger, to get the motors going, and it was a huge amount of work that went into it. Anyway, we were talking to Norm about 4 years ago, and we were thinking of putting a bigger dish on the roof of Jadwin Hall, our physics building, and Norm said, well, you know, there's this dish down near Belmar, maybe we should find out about that. So I called Fred. Fred must be one of the, I don't know if it's still there, but he must be one of the few people in the universe who has his cell phone number on the web. So it's incredibly easy to find him. And he was very receptive, invited me and my wife down. We came down, had a look, thought it would be easy. That turned out not to be the case. However, with the help of lots of people, Martin Flynn from OMARC, Jeff from OMARC, Tim Flynn has been tremendously helpful. Matt is there, lots of people. And then I mentioned Jeff Gettelfinger, an engineer who's the manager of the physics department at Princeton, but is an engineer by training. And I think my sense was he really loved coming down here to get away. I'm sure he loved his administrative job, but I think he liked this a little bit better. So anyway, that's it took a long time getting the motors working. The motor that drives the elevation, there's a complicated mechanism, big heavy mechanism, literally weighs a ton with the motor. That was all just a rusted hulk. That had to be, since we couldn't get a crane because of the umbrella of the dish, we had to build a small crane. Jeff designed a small crane that was hoisted to the top piece by piece. This 1-ton motor drive assembly was lowered to the ground and then sent off to some character in Texas who looked on the web like a big operation. Turns out it was a guy with a cell phone. He knew another guy with a cell phone on the web. He knew some shops. What we didn't realize is creditors were hot on his tail. So we sent him a fair amount of money to refurbish this thing. And at a certain point, he kind of disappeared. So we were quite worried because the motor was gone, the money was gone. But our purchasing department somehow tracked him down. And we found that the motor had been left in a warehouse someplace and was basically being held ransom we paid the warehouse operator $1,000 or something and got the motor back. So that was the low point. Things really steadily improved from there. So I don't know what else I should say. You'll see this demonstrated later on. Actually, let me mention just a little bit more, and that is our original motivation, which is still our prime motivation, is education, and we mainly want to use this dish as a tool for radio astronomy. In particular, we wanted to detect radio pulsars. We've done that. We've got nice signals from how many? 10 pulsars, varying signal strengths. The other thing we'll study is the 21 centimeter radiation from the galaxy. We can see the spiral arms of the galaxy. There's all kinds of really nice measurements we can do with it. And the longer term plan, now it's more of a medium term plan, is to really open this up to the public. All of the listening part is accessible over the internet. It's password protected now, but the goal is eventually to make it so that students can log in, take their data back and analyze it and do basically introductory labs with it, or maybe not introductory, but do labs at various levels with it. But the Moonbounce, of course, historically is very important. So we were very enthusiastic about participating in this celebration. So I think that's all I have to say. Let me thank Mike and Jeff and Fred again for all their support. It's been great.
Dan, could you just tell us exactly what's going to happen today?
Okay. So, and this reminds me.
And what they're going to see.
Yeah. So we have displays set up courtesy of Alan Wolke, who works with Tektronix. So we don't want to spoil it now by shooting the pulses out too early. But let me just explain these displays. The one on the right is a time series. So what will happen is we'll press the key of the transmitter, and that will send out a series of pulses. And you'll see those appear on this oscilloscope display, and then 2.5 seconds later, you'll hear the echo of those. You'll both hear and see the echo of those pulses coming back. So this is sort of a recreation of what happened back in 1946. On the left side, this is a spectrum. This is a little bit more technical, but this is, if you look closely, you'll see that our transmitted signal goes out at a slightly different frequency than our received signal, or more to the point, the received signal comes back at a slightly different frequency, and this is Doppler shift. It's the same principle that the police use to get you on radar. But so we can actually measure the speed of the Earth's rotation with respect to the moon by analyzing that. And that's a science project we'll set up later. I don't know if there are other questions or...
What is the frequency?
Frequency, yeah. So we've been operating at 2 frequencies so far. One is 1420 megahertz, and that is a very famous frequency because it turns out that's a transition in the hydrogen atom. And when we listen for signals from the galaxy, we're essentially listening to all the hydrogen in the galaxy. There's only one hydrogen atom per cubic centimeter in the galaxy, which is not very many. But fortunately, the galaxy is a really big place, so it adds up to a lot of hydrogen. So we can hear those signals quite well. Today, we're operating at 1296 megahertz, which is a ham band. You're not allowed to just transmit at any old frequency, but since we're licensed radio amateurs, we can use the 1296 megahertz frequency band.
Yeah, all morning long, you guys have been conducting two-way communications with stations, other ham stations. What are some of the places that you were able to contact this morning?
Okay. If you could come up to the podium,
sure.
So we can record
Yeah. Okay, so the question was, what stations have we talked to? So we're sort of at the mercy of the moon in this. And earlier this morning, the moon was setting in Europe and on its way up here. So we talked to mostly European stations. On voice, we talked to a station in Switzerland who has a pretty big dish. Do you know, Al, how HB9Q? He's got a 15-meter dish, almost as big as this one. But a lot of other signals we worked on Morse, or stations we worked on Morse code. So Czechoslovakia, Germany, France, England, a bunch of them. It was about, I think, about 20 different stations, and then a few stations in the U.S. And we'll probably hear more this afternoon.
Thanks.
So how much power are you sending out? How do these numbers compare to the original experiment?
Okay. So we are transmitting about 250 watts, which is not a huge power until you take into account the focusing power of the dish, which is enormous. The original experiments, I think, were done at maybe 50, at 100, 2 kilowatts. 2 kilowatts at around 100 megahertz. So
111.5 megahertz and 50 kilowatts ERP.
ERP, yeah. So I don't. Our ERP is effective radiated power. Ours must be huge. I mean, in the megawatts. 5.5 megawatts. Okay, so that's a lot. My personal history in ham radio is contesting, and we have an expression, even if your signal is already quite good, the expression is you want to be loud. So we want to be loud.
During the amateur portion of the event this morning, while everyone was gathered here enjoying each other's company and probably my lousy coffee, we were receiving via email updates from some of the contacted stations. One of the most notable contacts was, "You're a flamethrower," indicating that we had a very good signal into his area of the world. So much kudos to you, Dan, and your team. So as you can see, we've been making amateur radio contacts via the moon. Most contacts were CW, or Morse code, but we are able to do a few on voice or single sideband. Before we do our reenactment of the original experiment, I'd like to take the opportunity to mention a few of the OMARC volunteers who have worked so hard to make this day possible. They have spent many weekends, evenings, to install the needed infrastructure. They are Mr. Matt Capazzoli. Matt, where are you standing? There you are, on TUC. Mr. Martin Flynn, W2RWJ. Martin, take a bow. Stand. Mr. Timothy Flynn. And Mr. Robert Bernard, KA8SAF, who is standing here behind the wall. And my special thanks to Mr. Stephen Fowler, InfoH Science Technician, Science Center Visionary. Steve, where are you hiding? There you go. And the many other OMARC, InfoH, and member organizations, and the other ones, anybody else who has lent us a hand. We've had a lot of volunteers who do not belong to InfoH or OMARC, but have come down and offered material support and labor support to make this day possible. Okay, there are a few, one other notable you need to know, and that is a dear friend of mine, Larry Wilkins, KB2RIS, SK. SK, after the call sign, indicates that Larry is no longer with us. His key is silent. He passed away in 2004. Larry was a former OMARC president and was responsible for getting OMARC involved with InfoH. Larry's dream was to see the TLM-18 restored to service. I only wish that he was here today to see that become a reality. Thank you, Larry, wherever you are. Okay, we're approaching the top of the hour here, just like we did 70 years ago. So, Dan, you want to get ready for the big thing, and we'll get that underway. Okay, a little history on the event that you may not know. We do have an audio and video system set up over here to show you it. The original event sent out a series of 1-second pulses and then listened for the tone return. The black and white newsreel footage that you see shows a 4-second pulse. That experiment was a experiment done after the fact to be for the news media, because a series of little beeps coming back wasn't exciting enough. So they set up the second experiment to send out a 4-second long pulse, to wait the 2.5 seconds to see the 4.5-second pulse come back. So Dan, you can do whatever you prefer, the series of pulses or the 4-second pulse. Ladies and gentlemen.
Well, while we're waiting, let me start with an apology. The OMARC people, under the orders of the colonel here, wanted everything ship-shape. And when we came in this morning, everything was just immaculate and beautiful. So we couldn't stand that, and we just made a mess of everything here. No, we didn't do it deliberately, but inevitably we needed the tools of the trade, coffee cups, stickers, things like that. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just send a series of dashes, and if we're lucky, you'll see them go, you'll hear them go out. I'll turn this way up, and then 2.5 seconds later, you'll see them come back, hear them come back. CQ, 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 CQ. This is November 2, Mike Oscar. November 2, Mike Oscar. November 2, Mike Oscar. November 2, Mike Oscar. CQ, CQ. CQ, CQ. November 2, Mike Oscar. November 2, Mike Oscar. November 2, Mike Oscar. Okay, so it's evidently not on this.
Thank you, Dan. They say history has a way of repeating itself. Only I think the gentlemen that were in that small wooden building 600 feet from us 70 years ago would have relished the idea of being able to actually send their voice to the moon and back. I think that was the farthest thing from their mind at the time. But their great step forward has led to so many advancements in communications and global communications. I want to bring back to the podium Colonel Lorraine. He has some things that has to be done, and then we'll have our closing.
Thanks again, Jeff. Dan, thanks an awful lot. I'll tell you, that was really spectacular. And Norm? And Norm, too? I got to do it?
Yeah, you got it.
I got to do Norm? Okay, Norm, too. Now, I want to tell you something. I was an infantryman in the military. My good friend Mike Smith was an aviator, combat aviator. You know, the interesting part about it is I'm really excited about this. And it's amazing to see so many people excited about things bouncing off the moon and coming back, just a couple of blips, and everyone's here for it. This is really wonderful. I forgot to mention one person when I was up here before. We have our NASA ambassador, Mr. Frank O'Brien. Frank has visited the store several times, and he'll tell you about it. Frank is the gentleman who set up the Apollo guidance computer and the display we have here. It's been at InfoWage for about the past 15 years. I guess it is 10 or 15 years. And it's something really worthwhile. We have an awful lot of displays around here. We'd like you to walk around and take a look at them because of some really interesting stuff. And it's only the beginning, is the way we're putting it right now. Once again, I know that Freeholder Curley has something.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. This is certainly far more exciting than watching Face the Nation on CBS on a Sunday morning, listening to all the BS of the presidential candidates. You know, it's amazing how communication has transformed and evolved. And I'm in awe with each and every one of you being in this room, being together with you. Because as a car dealer, I don't know much of what you do, but I do know that if you buy a Buick, a GMC, or a Kia from me, this is standard equipment in each vehicle. So be prepared. You know, ladies and gentlemen, it's absolutely fabulous, and I know county government agrees wholeheartedly to see Camp Evans and this section of the Great Wall Township with Mayor Conti and Committeeman DeRocco, and all of the commitment that your governing body has given to the rehabilitation of this region. And it's greatly appreciated. I represent the 630,000 residents of the great county of Monmouth, all 53 municipalities. And I bring with me a proclamation, and that is on behalf of our 5-member board, Freeholder Director Tom Arnone, Deputy Director Serena Damaso, Freeholder Lillian Berry, Freeholder Gary Rich, and yours truly, John Curley. If you'll indulge me for a moment, I'd like to read this to you. The proclamation is the Monmouth County Board of Chosen Freeholders, the 70th anniversary of man's contact with the moon. Whereas on January 10th, 1946, man's first real contact with the moon was made by the newly invented technology of radar by a small group of U.S. Army Signal Corps officers, civilian scientists, and engineers who were gathered in a small shack on a hill on Marconi Road, overlooking the Shark River Inlet in the West Belmar community of Monmouth County's Wall Township. Whereas the achievement marked the first time mankind put the imprint of his own devices on a heavenly body that lies beyond the atmosphere of the earth, and whereas it is acknowledged that this singular achievement began the journey that enabled man to make his first steps on moon and a giant leap forward for all of mankind. And whereas the Information Age Science History Museum, the Learning Center, and its member organizations, including the Ocean Monmouth Amateur Radio Club, and in cooperation with Princeton University, has brought radar back to life after over 40 years of inactivity. And whereas on January 10, 2016, this historical achievement will be reenacted, has been reenacted, on the same site precisely 70 years to the day that this outstanding event was accomplished. Therefore, the Monmouth County Board of Chosen Freeholders proclaim this day, January 10, 2016, in our archives as Diana Day, the 70th anniversary of man's first real contact with the moon. Congratulations to each and every one of you.
Pardon me, this is grip and grin time, folks.
I'd prefer not to have my picture taken with you, gentlemen.
We can Photoshop them out later.
Or make radical improvements.
My brother Chris, Congressman Smith, regrets not being able to be here today. It was a schedule conflict that he could not change, or his staff couldn't change it in time. Not sure which. But he is well aware of InfoAge. He's been here before. He has, when I told him I was coming, whether he was or not, he said, well...
You got voluntold.
Yeah. Well, just like to say that his interest is real, and he will be continuing to be a supporter. And I know Mike has talked with him frequently about what he might be able to do on behalf of moving this project forward. As an aside, I lived in Wall for 10 years, and some of my neighbors worked here before it closed down, and 2 of them were sent to Picatinny, and one was, I don't know where he went, but so I was familiar with the site, but certainly not the way it has evolved, and appreciate what all of you have done, and I know Chris is very interested in seeing it continue to progress. Thank you.
The interesting part about Congressman Smith, when the Army left this to us, they ripped out all the sewer lines. Okay, we offered to put the sewer lines in, and I'm talking Wall Township. I sat there with Joe Varuni, Roger McLaughlin, the mayor at the time, and meaning Wall Township, offered to put the sewers in if they let us do it. They said no. We said, we will give you the sewers and you can install them. They said no. It was a battle that we faced for a whole bunch of years. By ripping the sewers out, they also ripped out electrical lines. When they ripped out electrical lines, the furnaces in the H buildings and the other buildings couldn't start. Winter came, pipes froze, buildings were destroyed. Literally every building on this site, every building on all 35 acres that we had was full of mold. I'm talking black mold. There was 4 feet of water in the cottages. This building was not as badly affected as some of the others, but it was affected. There was a meeting between myself. I was a base transition coordinator at the time. I was the guy that wrote up the grant to bring this property, the whole bit of property, over to Wall Township. And I remember the Army project manager was there, one of them. And I just remember that we sat in this meeting and we tried to get something done, and they blew it off. And I just remember Roger McLaughlin at that time, who's your boss? Is he the decision maker? No. Who's your boss? He the decision maker? No. Who's your boss? And he turned around to Chris Smith's representative and says, please tell Chris that we'd like to get a meeting with the Secretary of the Army. And Joe Varuni, Roger McLaughlin, and Chris, your brother, sat down at a meeting, and when the Undersecretary of the Army came in, in no uncertain terms, it was pretty much pointed out, you better straighten this out. The Army screwed it up, you better straighten it out. And it was never straightened out entirely to what was supposed to happen, but the Army put a lot of money in here to put sewers back in, to replace windows and doors, and I guess that was pretty much it, Fred, right? And gave us basic electricity that we needed. So I'll tell you, when you talk about Chris Smith being a supporter of us, and he's continued to be a supporter of us throughout the years. So we're very fortunate, Mike, to have your brother on our side. It really helps. Thank you very much. And now, I would like to pass the podium over to Ms. Anne Marie Conti, the mayor of Wall Township.
I just have to say, wow. I'm in awe. I'm amazed at the commitment and how proud to have this right in Wall Township. And to have our superintendent of schools here, because the vision will be to bring those children here. But we will be offering all of you a proclamation at a regular business meeting. So we thought we would bring you all to Town Hall to be able to do that for your commitment and your vision. Fred, thank you. I know I was here about 10 years ago, and then when we were, tell me that event with all the dignitaries. Yes, yes. And it was just amazing how dignitaries around the world were so impressed that Wall Township was a supporter. And to the freeholders, thank you so much for all of your support, and all the scientists and all the people here that give tirelessly to be able to make this function. This is a gem, and I can't wait to see the continued vision and support. We, as a Township Committee, will continue to support all of the efforts of this fine institution and what you continue to do for our residents, for our state, and for all the children for years to come. So thank you very much.
Just very briefly, just backing up what the mayor said, I think Mike and Fred both said very graciously that they were very thankful for the commitment that the Township Committee has made to this spot, and we're certainly grateful to be part of it. But the reality, the truth of the matter is that we're really just a small component of what goes on here. We're happy to support it, but really it's the tireless efforts of Fred and Mike and everyone else who's involved here that keeps this place being so vibrant and such keeps the memory alive and continues to transition us into the great work that will happen here over the next few years, and we're just grateful to be a part of it. So thank you.
Mayor County, thank you very much, and Councilman, thank you as well. On behalf of the Ocean Monmouth Amateur Radio Club, our academic partners at Princeton University, and InfoWage in general, we'd like to thank you for attending today. Our OMARC facility is located in Building 9116, which is immediately to my right. It is open, and we have on-the-air operations going on as we speak. We'd invite you to come over and visit our facility. You're also invited to get on the air and help us celebrate. So if you don't have mic fright, we can actually put you down in front of a radio and have you talk to someone else around the world. And if you have children and you want them to shut up, put a microphone in their hand. Works every time. Okay? So on behalf of all here and all our volunteers, thank you very much for your continued support. Mayor, on a personal note, I think the Township of Wall, many years ago when the BRAC Commission decided to close Camp Evans, had the foresight and the vision to accept the property from the Army and turn it into public space that has been, I have to say, I'm not a Wall Township resident, but I am very amazed in the work that you and your predecessors have done with the facility for the general purpose of the public. It is a great honor to be here and with you and all the work that Wall Township has done with that. And thank you all for coming today. I would like to close our session. Thank you all.